Today's guest is Dan Charles, the founder of Coderity, a marketing agency built specifically for the events industry. Dan's journey began in the music world as an audio engineer and event producer, scaling productions from intimate 60-person shows to arenas with over 3,000 people. Along the way, he learned firsthand why so many talented professionals face unpredictable feast or famine revenue cycles, not because they lack skill, but because traditional marketing advice often fails to work for specialized businesses. After transforming his own struggling events into consistent successes, Dan developed the Evergreen Event Profit System, a framework that helps event companies generate reliable bookings year-round. His clients have since added millions in predictable revenue by moving beyond referrals to systematic lead generation. On this episode, Dan will share honest lessons from his own mistakes, explain why most marketing advice often falls short, and provide your audience with practical tools to build stability and growth in their own businesses. Let's welcome Dan Charles to the show. Hey, how's it going, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing good, Donald. Very good, thanks.
Yeah, man. So I kind of invited you on because I got a little bit of a taste of the music industry myself. I hold a nonprofit for veterans that are transitioning into the music industry. So I know it is a extremely tough industry, and I know that most artists do a very poor job at marketing themselves. So yeah. I think we'll have a very interesting conversation. So why don't we start with what brought you into, you started out as a musician and then you worked your way into the marketing side, or how did this come about?
Sure. So really going right back, my dad was a rocker and he used to be dancing around the house all the time, Elvis Presley, all the gang, Creedence, Clearwater Revival, all of that. So I kind of grew up with music around me all the time. And I was born in the 80s, 81 myself. So I kind of grew up in that kind of, that peak 80s, 90s era. I always loved music, always loved how music was put together. I when I was a kid, I used to wonder how they even made the sounds and, or how they could think up those melodies and things. So naturally that led on to when I got older into kind of learning about music production, and that led to kind of making kind of my own sort of electronic music and stuff and working with bands in the studio, recording, doing lots of engineering and things. And I always had the passion for that, and it was just something which is still with me right now. And from that, it naturally led on to just kind of wanting to put on events. And I started out with very small little events, just literally doing it for free, just going into kind of small little bars and clubs going, hey, do you need someone to do some music for you? We'll do it for free. Just let us play, basically,
Yeah.
And worked out really well because we had some pretty good successful nights where people really enjoyed it. And then they were like, hey, do you want to come back? And we're like, and then my parents and friends were like, they're asking you to come back. Maybe you should charge something for it. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Kind of that musician mindset. I'm like, money, but what, ask for money? No, so we started charging a bit, and then it was like, oh, actually, we're making a little bit of money here. Maybe we could invest in like hiring a bigger kind of venue, and it kind of really grew from there. And we hired the bigger venues, bigger responsibilities, and it was kind of like, okay, we had some nights which just didn't do very well at all, and we lost money, and then some which did. So I was like, right. So how do I get more butts on the seats, as it were, and just really kind of got into just basic marketing stuff like, okay, like maybe we need a website, maybe we need this, like let's get some flyers, let's do a kind of a guerrilla marketing campaign with some stickers on bus stops and things like that, and it kind of just grew and grew and grew. And I started paying more attention to the profit and loss of the events and things, and just managed to kind of keep reinvesting and scaling that up. And through that time, I've met literally thousands of amazing artists and people. And I just love the way music brings people together, and ultimately I kind of stopped doing the music thing because I end up having kids, and I couldn't really stay up till 5-6 o'clock in the morning, multiple nights a week. My wife was like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm still working." So I kind of had to stop doing the events on that side, but I was really good at marketing at that point and decided to go down the marketing route. And I just kind of did just general marketing, like as a freelancer, and then kind of started the business and just kind of did that for quite a few years, just helping anyone, like, local businesses. Hey, well, I build a website. And then I kind of realized that it was a bit of a challenge. And I was like, mate, like, I love events. I still go to events and listen to music. It's still around me all the time. We have some clients who are event clients, and we do really well with those clients, more than the other ones. So I was like, why don't we just actually kind of start specializing in this industry? And that's really where things kind of started taking off in the last several years, is where we kind of focus on the event space, because I could actually talk to them. And I could actually, understand the challenge they had every single day and every single month and every single quarter. And basically from that, we were able to systemize kind of ways to kind of help get them results, sell more tickets, get more clients, bring in more business, get their brand out there more, and just kind of make sure they have their own unique stamp on things. And here we are today.
Yeah. I mean, so when I started this, I knew nothing about the radio business, the music industry. I literally started it because I seen veteran musicians that were older, getting the military. They were in their 30s to 40s, and I seen that they were really struggling, getting buried in the whole Spotify stuff, and it didn't take long. You could tell by their Facebook pages and stuff like that they were not marketing very well. And so that's where I kind of stepped in and started Veteran Voice Radio. And I have learned a lot as I've gone. But again, that marketing side is really tough. I have watched, like you kind of said in your bio, it's like one day you'll have a packed area, and the next day you're begging the homeless guy outside to come in and watch. And I've seen it on both ends on the little events that I've been a part of. How is it that, where do you think most musicians and most event places go wrong? Where is it that they really seem to struggle, in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. So from talking to kind of hundreds, thousands of artists, and like myself kind of doing the music thing as well with other people and things like that, one of the things I think a lot of people have a big misconception out is that you can do music for just the pure love and the pure passion of it, and that is absolutely worthwhile. And I think everyone should do that. If you want to make a career out of it, or you want to kind of really make something of that, there's quite a few kind of frogs you've got to swallow. And I think a lot of them aren't necessarily prepared for the fact that actually, when you start getting into something, doing the creative piece of the music, which is most probably what they love the most, is often about 20% of it, and the rest of it is the business side of things. And you've almost kind of got to get your business head on with that. And I think that's part of the challenge, is like, they're very creative people. They don't necessarily want to have that business cap on, and that's fine, because it's absolutely not for everyone. But having the expectation that things should just go up and to the right, as it were, without that kind of approach to things, is just not really realistic in that respect, And I think also as well with that, what I see a lot, and I'm seeing a much more positive trend now, but what I saw before was, for many, many years, a lot of artists would just be following pretty much what the big artists are doing, right? And
Right.
The big artists are the ones who have these huge teams of people who are just doing, they're spending thousands, hundreds of thousands, and obviously the mega stars, we know it's millions sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they're looking at them and they're going, why can't I do that? And I'm like, well, because that one video cost £600,000 or something, right? And it's like, that's why you can't look like that, So it's kind of understanding that there's different tiers to this. And
Right.
the really positive trend I am seeing in a lot of ways is that just being much more yourself out there and just being really genuine about, you know, who you are, what you believe in, what matters to you as a person, as an individual, you know, not giving away everything about your life, but kind of letting them into a bit of your life, and even the behind the scenes of kind of when you're recording and you're writing and you're making those mistakes and you haven't kind of got the riff down, and people love to watch that. They'll happily watch a stream of someone who's engaging just clang a riff for hours until they get something which is really great. And then, you know, they love to kind of see that. And so with the tools and everything we have now, it's really kind of flattened the playing field, as it were, for that. And I think that's great, because it just means that anyone can kind of really start getting their name out there. And I feel like just try not to be everything to everyone. And I think a lot of the previous kind of advice a lot of artists, people I know, would follow was just try and copy what's successful and what you're seeing out there. Whereas actually now it's like find your niche, really focus there, and just don't worry if the niche is small, because actually there's probably millions of people out there who can resonate with that. So just focus on that. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of artists making a lot of success these days, which is great, because you get to just be yourself, right?
Yeah. And I think that's great advice as well, because you know, it takes a lot to go from playing in front of a few people at a bar or a restaurant to on a stage with paying customers and everything else. The atmosphere is different, and the requirements are different. And I think, you know, as a band, it's kind of like going from a teenager to an adult. You have to go with baby steps and mature as an artist before you start jumping into the big water. And I think that's another thing too that I see with artists. They tend to want to do one of two things. They either don't know what they want to do, or they want to go straight to the top. And I get that. But again, like I said, it takes time, and you have to have a team. And I learned as well that dealing with label companies is extremely aggravating.
Very much.
I don't know with the marketing side, but have you seen that the artists that you deal with, they kind of are on that fence anymore? Not every artist anymore tends to run trying to find that label company. A lot of them enjoy being independent. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So like what I'm kind of seeing is, you know, from the people I still know who kind of do this, is that a lot of them are actually kind of turning away from those major labels, because yes, a major label can make you a superstar in many ways, but they almost own everything, right? They almost own you in a lot of ways. And a lot of people are like, well, if I got this far, and a lot of labels won't really start looking at you until you kind of have quite a strong following, right? So you've done a significant amount of that grind, significant amount of that work before a label will even really consider it. And then it's kind of like a lot of the artists, like we said, who are really seeing success of just being themselves, putting their own unique message out there to the world. And then to kind of have basically you, because you're not really filtering yourself so much, then have you signed over to a label who almost owns your identity, is just a real big turn off for a lot of artists. And you know, and the same for kind of speakers and people who do kind of events and kind of talks and, you know, all those types of things as well. Is it's like, you know, be careful where you kind of get that investment from, because they may take more than you really want to kind of give them. And you know, we do see that a lot in the industry, is, you know, people who work great as an independent, and then they just kind of go mainstream, and they kind of get forced into a kind of a shoebox, as it were, and then drop into obscurity.
I've seen a lot of really bad deals, you know, and I get it. It comes with a lot of unique experiences, you know. They have a bigger reach than the average person, so maybe it's better stages, more people, you know, more photo shoots, video shoots, those types of things. But at the end of the day, a 95-5 deal is not a good deal.
It's not.
You,
You know?
you may feel like a hero until you open up your refrigerator and see there's not much in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got a warm beer because I can't pay the electric bill.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. And
yeah.
it is quite interesting how to watch artists balance this. With these artists that have really small budgets, right? What is your recommendation for them to start out with marketing so that they can get big enough to get noticed, by bigger marketing companies and so forth?
Yeah, so I mean, what we see kind of across the event space is that even with small budgets, you can still have quite an impact because the internet's a very vast place, and you can kind of find pockets of really engaged people who are going to resonate with something that you're creating in the world. And I think the awesome thing about that is that, again, like I said, is kind of find your niche. Is like, rather than people think, oh, the internet, there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, I need to market to all of them. It's like, no, you just need to market to a tiny little slither of those people. And then from there, things can kind of compound. And I would just say the key thing is that we see marketing materials, all these kind of things being produced much easier these days with AI. The quality is kind of going up and it's able to be produced a lot more at scale, as it were. So artists do have a lot more help in that respect when it comes to making kind of collateral materials and things like that. But what I would say is that because of that, the human unique voice is even more important than it ever was before. And it's going to be more and more important moving forward when, we're going to have AI TV presenters and radio hosts and, all these kind of different AI algorithms basically kind of delivering the music and stuff for us, and so having your own unique kind of voice is going to be really, really important. And so I heard a really one of your podcasts a little while ago. I believe it was with Colonel Kenny, and he was talking about find your audience.
Yeah.
Right. And I think his mother asked him, like, well, who's your audience? And he was like, oh, well, everyone sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, so that's kind of goes back to that of like, who is your audience? It's absolutely not everyone. And it's okay to be divisive, and it's okay to kind of say your own thing and not appeal to everyone. So what I would say is just kind of find a few key things, maybe just a handful of things that really matter to you, and it can just be around your music. Like, it could be around how you started learning about music. It could be about, hey, you could be one of those nerdy ones who kind of really loves to go into all the scientific aspects of kind of music and frequencies and audio engineering and things like that. Or you could just go on to kind of like how you basically hash out a tune by just banging a guitar for like 12 hours until something sticks, kind of thing, And so you could just find a handful of those things and then just really narrow in on just repeating that for quite a long time, And with tools these days, it does allow you to kind of push out to multiple channels and networks. And I feel like the more places you can, it's funny because the more places you can be saying the same message, the better you can kind of reach your niche. So the great thing is distributing online is quite straightforward nowadays. You can syndicate everything. So just having a really consistent message and having just a handful of kind of key topics you want to talk about rather than everything. And you'll find some of that will start to resonate, and then you can kind of either expand from there or you can kind of narrow it even more, sort of thing. So it's almost like choosing your target and then just really going at that rather than trying to spread yourself too thin.
Yeah. I think like you were saying, as far as reaching as many people as you can, saying the same thing, the one thing that I've noticed is the comedian venues, they do really well on like doing TikToks and stuff like that. And it seems like the musicians, they do better as doing lives and stuff like that versus actual little video of their songs. A few will make it an actual video. There's a few artists out there that do that, but I think for the most part, it seems like there's, you have to kind of also understand your audience and where are they searching for you, before you start spending the money to dive down there. Just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks can become very expensive.
Very, very, yeah. It can be very disheartening as well, because you're kind of just doing all this work and not really getting any results. And a prime example was you saying about comedians. That's literally how I find most new comedians. Is like I find like shorts on YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm like, that was very funny. And then I see a few more from the algorithm, and then I'm like, oh, they've got a special. I'm going to watch that, and then I'll watch the whole thing, and then before I know it, I'm subscribing and things like that, and then really enjoying it like that, and I think that's the key thing is it's kind of like having their story to kind of tell. Like, for example, comedians, they have a special or something like that, which they can kind of take some of the great bits from, because they know that they can kind of put that consistent message out there and then funnel people through to their more detailed content, their more in-depth content, and I think that's a great way of kind of finding people, because a lot of the effort, for example, in the comedian scenario, a lot of the effort was putting the special together, for example, and they don't even have to be big budget. I don't think people are expecting this whole giant Netflix thing. I watched one from a guy called Finley, I can't remember his surname, Finley Christie, I think it was. I saw a few specials from him, and his special was him just on a stage with probably about 300 people in the room, but he was just really laying down some very funny comedy, right? And he had like a simple little slideshow and stuff. It was not the biggest, boldest kind of high budget production, but he was really just delivering the material in a great way, right? And he had everyone there laughing and stuff. So it doesn't have to be this giant extravagant thing. It just needs to be the core of what you're about. And then, you can kind of use that to kind of put little nuggets out there on these different channels.
I think also, like you're saying, if you stay within a moderate handle and you can keep a grip on your business side as well as your art side, it helps you be more present in the moment when you're on that stage and when you're performing, and your mind is no longer thinking about how am I going to market this? Where am I going to come up with the money for this next thing or whatever? It allows you to more effectively split those two worlds, so that when you're in that world, you can be present in that moment and give your best performance. And I think a lot of that will help too, because if you get over your head, now you're 60% on stage, 40% backstage, and it can be very daunting and kind of take out the passion that you had for it to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like you said, it's kind of like being able to kind of remove that filter almost there and just being just genuinely yourself on the stage, and just kind of maybe having a few extra little things in place to, like, for example, you could have a friend just doing some video recording, or just like if you're doing a live show to a small club or something like that, maybe have a chat with the engineer, see if you can plug a USB into the desk and get a live recording of your show, because you're already doing the show, you've already got people there, you've already got the live element. So, it's not very costly to kind of have like a USB recorder and then just a good auxiliary cable. And most engineers are nerds, they love to do that. They're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll plug that in, great, there's one more level to watch. Sort of thing, right? So that's just me. I was like, I used to love that sort of thing. So and like you said, because of that, and because you just don't need to filter, and because people appreciate the genuine side of things without all the heavy editing and overproduction, and like you said, it allows you to kind of get out of your head a little bit more and just more in the moment of like, well, I'm a human, I make mistakes, that's totally fine. People actually kind of appreciate and respect that authenticity a lot more. I find I certainly do when I'm watching it. I was watching a gig a few weeks ago and really enjoying it, and halfway through one of the tracks the microphone cut out, and so some people would be like, oh, it's the end of the world sort of thing, but the guy who was singing, he was just like, he just started jumping around on the stage for a minute, just pretending it was a trumpet, until the engineer ran over and just managed to get a new cable, plug it in. And the funny thing was, he was like, "Oh, clip that for YouTube," and then back into the lyrics, you know. And it was just like, yeah, that's perfect. That's a brilliant thing to put on there, like, because it's just what he would do in real life, sort of thing, you know. And I just thought those are the moments where you could have got really stressed out, or just be like, I'm just going to be myself and have a bit of fun with it, you know. I can't control it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the audience, you know, especially with your independent guys, the medium to smaller size venues, the audience feels better at that when they can relate to you, and because you're being authentic, and they know how you are here is how you would be at your house, relaxed, watching TV, and you don't get that same thing from those overly produced huge venues. You know, now you're watching somebody that you like the sound of, you idolize as far as the stardom, but you don't necessarily know them on a personal level. And so I think with comedians, that's extremely important. But even with your smaller venues, I think it's more respectable, and you're getting your music to an audience that can resonate to it, and not just like it, you know, but they can feel it. I'm sure it's not uncommon when you get a new client that comes to you and is needing help with marketing. What is usually their first question that they lead with? Kind of tells you where they're at in their marketing world.
Sure. So a lot of them do come in kind of being like, right, so this is what we want to do in the next 3 months. And I'm like, oh, okay, right. So you want to basically 10x everything you've got, right? Okay, great, sure. Do you have any infrastructure or foundations in place? No, you know, and of course, a lot of them want to kind of make money and be successful and things like that, you know. But I think it really does. And that's why that last podcast I listened from your show about like who is your audience was so important, because it's just, that's the one thing I'm basically talking to everyone about, every single client who comes on board. We're like, who is your audience? And it's quite scary how many of them are stumped by that. You know, they're just, well, people who are, you know, X, Y, and Z sort of thing. And I'm like, right, okay. The problem with that is, you know, it's a huge, huge audience. And like, again, how are you going to kind of reach them, you know? And so one of the first things we do is actually really help them understand who their audience is and who's going to resonate with what they have to offer. And so we do that. It's an unconditional thing. It's mandatory for every single client who comes on board, is that we really define that with them. And what we found is, since we've started doing that over the last few years, it's really, really accelerated results because of that. Because, like I said, a lot of the kind of creatives and all these kinds of things for marketing, stuff like that, are the barrier to creating high quality stuff isn't as high as it used to be. So it's much more about like, how do you really, I don't want to use intimate because it's a bit of a buzzword, but intimately understand who your ideal audience is, you know. And then it's just all about just kind of pretty ruthlessly just talking to them through every single channel you can. And when you find things which work, don't just reinvent the wheel with it. After that, you know, you kind of iterate on that thing which works, because ultimately, for example, you might have some messaging which works really well, and then you might go, oh, okay, that worked well, right, on to the next thing. And it's like, well, believe it or not, a lot of the most successful kind of, you know, speakers and artists and people like that you hear, they kind of stay there, the same message over and over again for years and years and years, because there's literally billions of people on this planet. And like they say, they get bored of it way before their audience ever does. And so it's the same as anything. If you find something which really works, then just iterate on that and expand on that. Don't just constantly reinvent the wheel all the time. Right. If it's not sticking, though, yeah, you should be kind of trying to iterate. But as soon as you find something that sticks, understand why it sticks, and then expand from there. So start with who your audience is, and then just put those messages out there, lots of them, until you find something which sticks, and then iterate on that, you know. And you can do that quite cost effectively these days. Yeah,
I mean, if you have a Facebook page and you don't go paying for likes and all those other things, that answer just naturally will come. You will see the demographics of the people that are following your page and sticking with your page, because over time it's going to equal out to who your greatest audience is. And I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in having to please everybody that customer service type thought. They don't take the time to think of they're not a widget. There is going to be people that just don't like this kind of production. And I worked with another nonprofit that I think has seen that. They're real similar to me. I'm veteran oriented, so a lot of my audience is of that 40 to 65 year age, because they were 20 or so when the war on terrorism started, and they remember 9/11 and so forth. So they resonate to me a little bit more. That nonprofit that I was talking about is in that same exact category. And every year they put on a concert, and the first night a heavy metal rock group, and the next night will be country night. And you see it every time. There's an audience for like the first band on rock night, and the headliner, everybody's packing up and leaving, you know. And I told him, I said, I just don't think your audience really likes rock and roll, man, especially metal.
This is it. It's like, what's happening? There's a bit of a trend, you know.
So they have decided now they're going to do 2 country nights, and it makes a lot more sense. But it's, again, knowing your customer, and not just, you can't just do it for the artist and say, hey, I'm going to put on a venue because I really like you, or I like what you stood for. And then you put them in front of nobody and you're like, oh, well, I didn't think about what the audience liked. You know, and it can be daunting, you know. Let me ask you this, is with the technology and everything that's came out, have you seen a difference between pre-COVID and after COVID? Has the industry kind of changed, or is it now slowly getting back to the way it was?
Yeah, so interesting question. I was actually doing some research. I wrote an article about this fairly recently on my website about the kind of the trends, especially with kind of Gen Z, the younger generations, which everyone just seems to think is that, oh, Gen Z, they're just digital, online. And actually they seem to be valuing those live personal experiences of events just as much as, you know, the older generations. And looking at the stats, it was like, you know, during COVID, during the pandemic, it was like 80% of kind of all events were naturally kind of online, and the others were kind of like sort of a hybrid, very small events with kind of digital broadcasting and things. And that's tapered down quite a lot, but it's never really gone away. So it kind of went from 80-odd%, 82%, I think it was, down to about 41% in 2024. It's expected to kind of continue declining, but it's mainly because I think there's just huge growth in the industry overall, you know, not just in the music side, but in all different types of events, you know, from the corporate side all the way through to kind of talks and speeches, expos, everything like that, you know. And huge growth across the board. I mean, 2025, it's set to be about $1.3 trillion industry overall. And obviously the music piece is a big part of that as well. But over the next 10 years, it's expected to be about 2.4 trillion. So there's a huge amount of growth there. And so digital's never really kind of going away, but it definitely had a huge spike during COVID. And we had clients who were like, you know, in the event space, had to lay off 30-40% of their kind of team as a result of those kind of immediate shutdowns of kind of no events at all and stuff, which is obviously quite painful, but a lot of them pivoted to kind of doing the online stuff. So knock on wood, it never happens again that we have a pandemic like that again. But I feel like the events industry is a lot more braced and a lot more prepared if something like that was to ever happen again, you know, with the digital side of things. So yeah, it was a big spike. It's definitely tapered off, but it's not going away. It's kind of almost merging, and people are, what we're seeing a lot more with events is people are having, you know, they're kind of almost bringing the event to you before you've even got to the event. And then through marketing and through kind of AI and all these kinds of things, they're making it a lot more personal to each person, which is kind of cool, right? Because it just means that everyone has their own experience, and kind of can make things a lot more memorable, especially if you are really focusing on bringing those people together. I think that's the key thing. We're all staring at our screens all the time. We're all on social media, or we're all very distracted. The younger generation, 69% of them, I believe, said that they feel more isolated than ever before. And that's a sad thing, right? That's horrible to hear that. Because when I was a kid, no doubt, like when you were a kid, you were probably out on your bike, cycling down by the canal, catching bugs in your eyes at dawn and stuff like that, heading home when your parents told you the street lights came on, right? You know what I mean? And that was it, like no phones or anything. That's what I grew up with. And I wasn't isolated. I just cycled for 5 miles or 10 kilometers to go and see if a friend was in. I didn't even know if they were in, and I couldn't turn up and see if they were in. So that was real connection, because then you'd just be hanging out with your friends all the time in the real world, and that's sadly kind of gone a bit. And I think that's what the younger generations are really looking for, is actually going out, having experiences and spending time with their friends and other people, and having human experiences, which is really cool. And I love that.
I think, it's really interesting that you said that, because I had a guest on who was very big in AI, right? And I asked him this question: what do you think the AI is going to hold for the future of people? And I was not expecting his answer at all. He said it's going to bring people together again. And I said, well, how is that? And he said, well, you think about it, when the internet came about, now everybody's in front of a screen and they're talking to their friends online and so forth. He said, with AI, you're not going to know if your friend is real or not, or the person you're talking to is real. He said, AI is going to get that good. And if you really want to know the truth, you're going to want to be able to touch it and hold it and make sure that it is a real person that's talking about that. And I never really thought about it, but it's real interesting that you just said that, the younger generation is now wanting to be more interactive with real people and real venues, because that he could very well be right. That could be part of it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to get into the business side of the marketing, right? Obviously, it's a whole separate business from the entertainment business. It's part of it. What should a band, when they decide they're going to hire a company to come in and help with their marketing, what should they expect to spend, and what kind of budget should they be setting aside?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a few kind of ways to really look at that. And when I was working with quite a lot of artists and things like that, doing kind of studio work and, all those kinds of things, it was kind of aligning with where you're at, and it's kind of like, if you are really, really talented, but you don't really have any kind of presence or visibility or kind of reach, as it were, where people kind of know who you are, then it is, again, doing that really foundational kind of work. And that either takes quite a lot of time, energy, or quite a lot of money. So it's kind of like, unless you kind of got some good cash sort of thing, in the bank, as it were, and you're prepared to kind of do that, it is still a bit of a grind at that point, because ultimately, if you're bringing on any form of agency, you're bringing on specialists, especially if they've been in it for years. You're bringing on specialists who sometimes have decades, or like combined their team together can have like years and years of experience in one particular area. What that does do is it does mean that your chances of success, if you can kind of sustain that relationship with the agency for quite a long period of time, are significantly higher. But there's a lot of moving parts within that. And ultimately, agencies are going to be kind of really kind of laying the land as best as possible, but they have overheads, right? They have an office, they have a team of people. They've got to make sure they put bread on the table for their team and for their families, and they got to pay their taxes and all these kind of fun things, right? And so there's hard costs to them, which they can't really go below, and so the challenge with that is that a lot of the time, if you're kind of really struggling to maybe meet their very bottom end of what they can do for you, you're not necessarily going to get the best result. However, what I would say is that if you're a kind of smaller band and you're just starting out, it really helps to kind of learn the market how you can as well, learn some of it yourself as well, really kind of understand it. Because if anything, even if someone helps you in the long term, you're going to have better conversation with those people because you understand what it takes to edit a YouTube video, right? You understand what it takes to put a quality podcast together. You understand what it takes to kind of communicate with a sound engineer for an event to make sure you get everything set up right. So it helps to kind of really at least have a core understanding of all those things.
Yeah.
And then, and it just makes a big difference in how you communicate with the people and work with individuals, because it is a team thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I guess I should have asked this question first because it might have gone better with the listeners. But when somebody goes to a marketing team, what part of the business side does that team usually handle? I know it's more than just making a website and throwing a newspaper ad out there. What exactly all should you expect a marketing team to do for you?
Yeah, sure. So a few things they might work with you specifically on your brand and make sure that it's kind of like really presented in the best possible way. They may help you kind of set up merchandise and things like that, so you can kind of start selling merchandise and things. They may also help with, again, your positioning and your audience and your voice and things like that, who you're actually talking to. And ultimately, they could also be helping to kind of produce media content and collateral for you as well, with, those kind of professional kind of look to it, which is going to appeal to your ideal people. And then they might also help with other forms of advertising as well. Like, for example, getting placements on the radio. They might also help with paid advertising, like Meta ads, Instagram ads, and those types of things as well. They may also be helping with kind of building up things like your website and stuff like that as well, and kind of getting traffic to that website. They may also, for example, help with actually kind of getting put on playlists and things like that for kind of Spotify and things like that as well. But I think one of the key things with like bigger, more reputable agencies is they will always start with a very clear, defined strategy first. Right. And that's kind of the first thing, right? Because otherwise, again, you're just going, hey, we can just do all the things and see what sort of happens. But actually, again, coming from that experience, if you've done your 10,000 reps of something, you kind of know this isn't the best way to kind of launch a merchandise store, or right. This isn't the best way to get playlisted. So they can help you cut the line, as it were, help you kind of skip the painful mistakes and learning curves and stuff like that. But that obviously comes at a cost as well. Right. So it's just kind of understanding where the strategy comes into that, and it should always be first. And I think so many people want to just skip past it because it's not really the most exciting bit.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think that's why so many artists, young artists especially, that are new to the industry, they don't even take that time to check their numbers on their own social media. They throw it up, they throw a Wix website up, and okay, I've done marketing, now on to making music.
This is it. Checkbox. Yeah. That's it. I've done that. Oh, no, you have to always be marketing forever now.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
It is so tough, man. And you've hit all the box, and it starts, like you said, by knowing who is it that you even want to talk to, because, if you're selling something that is not for that person, you're throwing money at the fireplace, because it's just not going to help. And it's not going to give you a positive result. So that strategy, that time work coming together where you can come up with a reasonable plan for a reasonable budget and get the most out of that until you're ready to grow. And I think that is some excellent advice. I want to switch just a little bit up to if somebody was following your path, right? And they started out as a musician or a sound guy, and they decided for whatever reason that they wanted to stay in the industry like yourself, and they wanted to go into this. What advice would you give them to be learning now before they throw the taxes out there and the overhead and everything else?
So I would definitely just say that if you really want to make a go of it, it again, understanding that there is a business element to it, and it's inescapable, and you will be, if you always have the mindset of always looking to improve and learn and upskill yourself in every area of your life, it will lead you down some fantastic paths, in life. And again, you can have those conversations with people in many different ways, which kind of just facilitates so many different areas of your life. Boring example, I absolutely hate doing accounting, and I can't stand looking at a balance sheet. But I needed to learn how to do it because some accountants and stuff like that just said they knew what they were doing and they didn't. So I was like, right, I need to understand why there was no profit from this event, for example, even though we sold out. Like, what happened there? I pretty much did all the numbers and stuff. So it was, understanding those kind of business side of things is enough to have the kind of conversations competently, and then you can bring people on who can competently do it for you in the long term. So you don't do it anymore. But unfortunately, it's kind of like you kind of have to just master a lot of skills and just be open to learning. And some of it's going to be really, really boring and tedious stuff that you're not going to want to do. And a lot of people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
They think it's just going to be, I'm just going to rock out on the guitar all the time and go on tour. It's going to be great. And it's like, yeah, it's not, unfortunately. So it's just kind of really getting the mindset of like, I need to learn, I need to understand all these different elements, at least to a point where I can competently talk to people about it. And then if I apply myself in the right way, I can start bringing people on to help with different areas of the business. And so, that's how I'd approach it. Yeah.
How important is it for them to start making friends and networking in this industry? Because obviously it would help if you knew somebody that ran a radio station that you were trying to get people onto, and maybe even in the TV world or whatever. It doesn't hurt to have friends, and no, I think that would be important as well. Would you say?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like ultimately, music and events are a people industry. They're 100% because it's about bringing people together, right, over a common thing. So again, if you are good at kind of understanding the industry and all these different areas, that will make you more of a better communicator with a wider variety of people, which can open a lot more doors to kind of making friendships and partnerships and seeing opportunities and things like that. For example, like say one prime example, when I was working, I was doing kind of like record distribution. I was working for a kind of a record distributor just before kind of vinyl kind of imploded. And I was kind of doing more of the digital type of thing, but it was just kind of like understanding that the people who were printing the records and the CDs, they had certain things that they needed to do to make it worthwhile for them and so forth as well. But we obviously needed to save money wherever possible. So it was kind of like being able to kind of talk from both sides of the fence and communicate both sides. Ultimately, that one example, I was able to kind of get a kind of a deal together where we ended up having a joint partnership. And then they actually kind of ended up kind of sponsoring our studio for a while, all these kind of things, because we were then able to kind of feed artists and bands who were coming into the studio to record and get their tracks mastered. We were able to kind of refer them to the distributor to get CDs and merchandise and records and all these kind of things printed. So it's kind of like just having that kind of communication skill in the first place was a fantastic way of really getting a partnership together, which helped both parties, and that's one example of networking where I still remember that to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan, I'm going to bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can sign up with you guys and become the next Garth Brooks or whoever out there. All right.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so obviously my name's Dan Charles, and I basically run an agency called Coderity. That's CODARITY.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Dan Charles on LinkedIn. You can also find us on Instagram, Coderity Agency, and Meta. Generally, if you Google us, you should be able to find us. And we basically help event businesses really kind of grow their revenue, build predictable systems, get more exposure, help them kind of automate ticket sales and things like that, and really kind of get their kind of core message out there. So, for example, if you are kind of like an event promoter, or you run a festival, or you're a venue, or you work in event services, then we have lots of different kind of strategies to help under our umbrella of our core service offering, which is the Evergreen Event Profit System. So if you want to check us out, I've got articles and all sorts on there, and it'd be great to have you.
All right. Well, Dan, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all this knowledge. I know I've got several artists that will probably be watching this. If not, they need to.
Yeah. Just send them the link after. Yeah, here you go. Watch.
I absolutely will. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing this. And I hope all the listeners that watch this, understand how much work behind the scenes goes to putting on those shows, from the person on the stage to the person that got the information in front of you to know that they're giving a show to begin with. A lot of moving pieces and a lot of talent goes into making all this happen. So I'm hoping everybody got to learn a little bit about behind the scenes. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. It's always helpful. And remember, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.